The golden morning sun bathed the shores of Waikiki in a warm embrace. Waves whispered over the sand, and palm trees swayed gently to the island's eternal rhythm. Honolulu, usually a haven of peace, buzzed with the quiet anticipation of Mother's Day. Mele stood by the glass window of a small cafe on Ala Moana Boulevard, her fingers wrapped tightly around a cup of steaming Kiko'o tea. She wore a faded hibiscus print dress, the same one she used to wear when taking Leilani to school years ago. Her heart beat with a mixture of hope and hesitation. Today was the day. For months, Mele had rehearsed this moment, this meeting with her daughter. A simple brunch. Nothing heavy. Nothing painful. Just a moment to sit, eat, and breathe the same air again. But beneath her calm exterior, a storm brewed. Leilani had changed. The bright-eyed girl who used to collect shells and run laughing into her mother's arms was now a sharp, guarded teenager. Mele hadn't seen her in over a year, since the custody ruling gave her ex-husband's sister temporary guardianship. Still, Mele believed in second chances. And today, she held tightly to the hope that her daughter would remember something, anything, about the bond they once shared. She checked her phone. 11:57 a.m. 3 minutes. Mele's hands trembled as she reached into her purse and pulled out a small locket, Leilani's baby picture inside. She touched it to her lips, whispered a silent prayer, and glanced outside. Then she saw her. Leilani stood at the edge of the sidewalk, wearing dark jeans, a navy hoodie, and oversized sunglasses. Her arms were crossed, her stance stiff. She looked like she wanted to be anywhere but here. Mele stood quickly, knocking her cup slightly. The tea spilled across the saucer unnoticed. She moved to the door, every step a quiet plea. "Leilani," she breathed. The girl didn't move, just stared. The two locked eyes, one pair brimming with emotion, the other unreadable. A long silence stretched between them, heavier than any words. Then, without a word, Leilani turned and began walking toward the edge of the shopping plaza. Mele followed. "Please, just 5 minutes," she called softly. "That's all I ask." Leilani stopped. 5 minutes for what?" she snapped without turning. "To say you're sorry? Again?" Mele froze. Before she could answer, Leilani turned around. Her sunglasses came off, revealing eyes that burned, not with anger, but with years of buried pain. "You don't get to walk back into my life because it's Mother's Day," Leilani said, her voice cracking. "You left. You always leave." Mele's breath caught. Her hands reached out slightly, instinctively. "I'm here now," she whispered. "I came back for you." A pause. Then Leilani looked around sharply, her voice lowering but cold as ocean wind. "Don't follow me again." She pulled out her phone. Mele's heart dropped. Was she calling? Security. As Mele stood frozen under the shadow of the palm trees, 2 uniformed mall officers began approaching from the distance. The storm had begun. Mele watched as the 2 security officers approached. Her breath hitched, but she didn't move. She didn't want to make a scene, not today. Not on Mother's Day. Leilani stood beside a column, her arms tightly folded, speaking to one of the officers. Mele couldn't hear what was being said, but it didn't matter. The message was clear. She wasn't welcome. One of the officers, a tall man with kind eyes, turned to Mele. "Ma'am," he said calmly, "your daughter's asked for space. We just need you to step back for now." Mele nodded. Her throat was dry. She backed away, but her eyes never left Leilani. "I'm not here to cause trouble," she murmured. "I just wanted to see her." "I understand," the officer said gently. "But she's upset. Maybe give it time." Time. It was always about time. As the officers walked Leilani into the shopping center, Mele sat back down at her table, the untouched tea now cold. Her hand moved to the locket again, brushing its surface. She remembered a day when Leilani was 7. They had been at the same cafe. She had spilled her juice, and Mele had laughed, cleaning it up while Leilani giggled. There was no yelling back then. No silence. Only small joys wrapped in sunlit mornings. What changed? Everything. Mele had made choices, some good, many not. Leaving for California had seemed necessary at the time. She told herself it was for work, for money, for their future. But Leilani had seen it as abandonment. And when Mele came back 2 years later, the damage had already set deep. She had fought to regain custody, to rebuild trust, but every time they got close, something shattered again. Now, even a brunch on Mother's Day was a war zone. Her phone buzzed. A message from her sister on Maui. "Did you see her? How did it go?" Mele stared at the screen, her fingers hovering above the keyboard. What could she say? She typed. She called security. Then deleted it. Instead, she just wrote, "She's hurting. Still." Leilani sat at the edge of a planter, just beyond the crowd. She stared into the fountain, ignoring the tourists snapping photos. She knew Mele would leave. She always did. But she hadn't expected this ache in her chest. Why did seeing her mother still hurt so much? From behind her sunglasses, Leilani watched the cafe. Mele hadn't moved. Still seated, still waiting, as if the clock hadn't ticked forward. Leilani hated how a part of her wanted to walk back. But she couldn't. Not after what happened 2 years ago. Not after the fight that ended with Leilani crying in her aunt's car, telling her she never wanted to see her mother again. Some things couldn't be undone. "Are you okay, miss?" asked one of the officers who had escorted her earlier. Leilani nodded without looking up. "Fine. You don't have to talk to her if you don't want to. But you should know she looked scared. Not angry. Just scared." Leilani didn't reply. The officer left her alone. As the afternoon sun climbed higher, Leilani took a deep breath and stood. She wouldn't go back to Mele. But she also wasn't ready to go home. She began walking, each step heavier than the last. Mele wandered to the beach, just a short walk from the cafe. She took off her sandals and let the sand press between her toes. This was the beach, where she used to bring Leilani after school. They'd build sandcastles and pretend they were guarding a secret kingdom. The waves had always calmed her daughter. Back then, the sea had made everything feel infinite and possible. She sat on a flat rock and pulled her journal from her bag. She hadn't written in weeks. But now, words spilled out in messy, urgent lines. She looked so tall, so grown, and yet still so lost. I wanted to hold her hand. I wanted to beg for forgiveness. But she looked at me like I was a stranger. A tear slipped down her cheek. She closed the book, then looked toward the water. Out on the shoreline, she saw a girl walking alone. Hoodie, jeans, dark hair tied back. Her heart leapt. It was Leilani. She hadn't gone far. Leilani didn't know why she came to the beach. Maybe she needed the quiet. Maybe she just wanted to scream at the ocean. But instead, she walked. And then she saw her mother. Mele was sitting on the same rock they used to share. The sight froze her. For a moment, neither moved. Leilani could have walked away. But her feet didn't. She approached, slowly, like a stray animal unsure if it would be welcomed or chased off. Mele noticed her, but didn't speak. Instead, she shifted slightly, leaving room on the rock. A silent invitation. Leilani sat, but didn't look at her. Minutes passed. Only waves spoke. Then Mele said quietly, "Do you remember when you used to bring me sea glass? You'd say each one was a gift from the ocean." Leilani didn't respond, but her fingers curled in her lap. "I kept them," Mele added. "Every single one." Leilani blinked. A wave crashed. "I still have the green one," Mele continued. "The one shaped like a heart." Leilani whispered, "You said it was lucky." Mele turned to her slowly. "It still is." They didn't say anything more, but they sat there, together, as the tide began to rise. The soft silence between mother and daughter was suddenly broken by a voice sharp enough to cut through the breeze. "Leilani." They both turned. A woman in a crisp linen blouse and designer sunglasses was marching toward them across the sand. Her heels sank slightly into the beach, but her pace didn't slow. "Auntie Kala." Mele rose to her feet instinctively. Kala's voice came cold and firm. "What do you think you're doing?" Leilani stood, unsure of what to say. Her breath caught between the lines of loyalty and confusion. Kala reached them, turning first to Melee. You had no right to approach her. We had an agreement. There was no agreement, Melee replied, steady but quiet. She's my daughter. Whom you left, Kala snapped. And now you think a walk on the beach makes it all better? Leilani stepped between them. Stop it, both of you. Kala's eyes softened slightly as she looked at her niece. Sweetheart, come with me. You don't need this right now. Melee's voice cracked. Please. Just let her choose. Kala looked at Melee, then back at Leilani. You want her to choose? After everything? The wind picked up, the moment suspended. And then Leilani turned and walked away. From both of them. Later that evening, Melee returned to her small apartment near Kapiolani Park. The place was quiet, filled only with the ticking of a wall clock and the hum of traffic beyond the balcony. She sat at her writing desk and opened her journal once again. This time, she didn't write her thoughts. She wrote a letter. To Leilani, each word carved out of guilt and love. She sealed it carefully and placed it inside a small envelope. The green sea glass heart was tucked inside as well. She walked 2 blocks to her niece's building and left the envelope with the doorman. No name on the front. Just one word written in delicate handwriting. Hope. Leilani returned home with silence stitched to her skin. Kala didn't speak much after the beach. She just drove them home, jaw tight, eyes forward. Back in her room, Leilani dropped her bag, peeled off her hoodie, and sat cross-legged on the floor. She stared at the blank wall in front of her until her aunt knocked gently and pushed the door open. You have something, she said, and placed the envelope on the desk. Leilani waited until she left. She stared at the envelope, then opened it. Inside, a folded note. I won't ask for forgiveness anymore, but I'll never stop loving you. You're my daughter. You're my light. No matter how far you walk, I'll always be just behind, waiting, not chasing. Love, Mum. And the sea glass. The green one. Shaped like a heart. Her fingers trembled. For the first time in years, she cried. Not out of anger, but because something inside her wanted to believe it wasn't too late. Melee didn't expect a reply. She sat in her apartment the next morning, staring out the window at the gray-blue clouds rolling over Diamond Head. She had done what she could. The doorbell rang. Her heart jumped. She opened it, but it wasn't Leilani. It was Kala. Her face was unreadable, but her voice was calm. She read the letter. Melee held her breath. Kala looked down, then met her eyes again. She's going to school now. She said she might call you. Not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But she said she wants to know who you are now. Melee felt her knees weaken. Kala handed her paper. This is her number. It hasn't changed. She said you'd never saved it. I was afraid to, Melee whispered. Kala nodded. Me too. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Kala said something Melee never expected to hear. Don't give up on her. Just don't push. And with that, she turned and walked away. 2 days passed. The envelope with the sea glass still sat on Leilani's desk. She hadn't moved it. She didn't speak about it either. But every time she glanced at it, a thread of warmth tugged at her ribs. Then one evening, just before sunset, her phone lit up. A message. Mum. No pressure. Just wondering how school's going. I saw a rainbow today, thought of you. Leilani stared at the screen for a long time. Then she typed. Deleted. Typed again. And finally hit send. Leilani. It's okay. I'm okay. I like the rainbow part. There was a pause. Then a reply. Mum. I kept that green heart for years, you know. I knew you'd come back for it. Leilani smiled. It was small, but real. She walked to her window and looked at the sky. A pale rainbow was forming, soft and faint. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone.